Hi, welcome everybody to today's episode of the Oncology Advisor podcast and our AI and tech blog post and video posting. I'm joined by our guest today, Luis Valentine, who's the CEO and co-founder of iLoF. Thanks so much for joining us today, Louis.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So, you've had a really interesting background in healthcare entrepreneurship. You're running this new company sort of at the intersection of AI and improving patient outcomes. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of how you came to found iLoF.
Absolutely. So I'm a CEO of iLoF. iLoF is a deep tech health tech company working on the personalized medicine space, and we've been collecting very large amounts of multimodal data, ranging from omics to optomics to genomics. And we've been building models that can actually help phenotype patients and can help drug discovery and drug development in both the clinical and the preclinical phases. So my background is actually, I was trained as an engineer. So I started my life as a computer scientist, and then I worked for a number of years in a wide array of industries, from commodities to tech transfer to, connected vehicles and smart cities. So yeah, I spent some time working on a really cool American scale up that got me into entrepreneurship. And then after that, together with two amazing co-founders, went to found iLoF.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And just for audience who's sort of more of an oncology kind of background, tell us more about iLo's platform and tell us a little bit about the fingerprint generation, fingerprint matching. Curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big difficulties that we believe exists currently in the personalized medicine sector is getting reliable data sources and really reliable data that you can use to train your models. So basically, what our platform does is we collect and use data from biological samples. So we collect digital fingerprints that basically correlate with ensemble of particles in patients' fluids, either serum or plasma. And then we, through advanced signal processing, extract information from this digital fingerprints, and then we train artificial intelligence models that correlate the specifics of each patient's biology to clinical outcomes. And I can give an example. This, for example, allow us to understand why some patients react better to a certain ovarian cancer treatment versus a different one, or why a certain patient is going to have very bad side effects when having a certain medication. And then it shouldn't be, for example, enrolled into a clinical trial because it will actually be harmful to the outcomes. So we've been running for 5 years. We've historically been mostly working on the neurodegenerative and on oncology. Historically, we're 100% on neurodegenerative. In the last 3 years, we kind of branched out. And yeah, we're still a tiny, like under 30-person team that raised around 10 million so far.
Got it. And yeah, like I was looking online, the website and some of the other podcasts you've done. Looks like there's a lot of hype around the Alzheimer's space that you all have worked in. Just for our physicians, sort of like our oncology kind of audience, can you talk a little bit about the results and some more background about the ovarian cancer risk stratification that you're working on?
Absolutely. So on ovarian cancer, we've got access to a really world-class cohort from a leading institution in the UK. We struck on a partnership, and we basically were able to create an initial model that proves our abilities to do differential screening. So on ovarian cancer, as we know, unfortunately, getting the treatment right is really key. So unlike Alzheimer's, where there are very little treatment approaches, luckily in ovarian cancer, there's already a couple, but it's very important to understand which ones to get right and to get right from the beginning, because depending, of course, on the subtype or the phenotype, you might want to with a more aggressive treatment approach or with a more moderate one. And we've created a model that in over 80% of the time is able to accurately predict the patient that has the highest probability of benefiting from a certain treatment versus the other. And this, of course, increases the likelihood and the probability of a smooth recovery and of reducing, negative effects from the cancer.
Yeah, that seems like really great results. And I think gynecologic malignancies are a really important area for us to target. Ovarian cancer is obviously very deadly. And I actually learned recently that endometrial cancer is actually surpassing ovarian cancer and some death
Correct.
statistics. So a lot of changing biology, a lot of changing data out there. So that's really cool that you're able to work as that. So kind of just taking a step back, you're an entrepreneur, you work in the startup space. A lot of our audience hasn't. So tell us just some of the sort of challenges that you might face in raising funds and trying to sell your scientific breakthroughs to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say that being in a startup is well, so two things I guess I can say about that. So number one, that being in a startup is like your entire career condensed in approximately 7 to 10 years. So you go from I don't understand anything, and then you start being proficient, and then you start rocking it, and then so you go by through what would be your entire career in the period of 7 to 10 years, which has good things and bad things. The good thing is that, of course, well, you grow a lot as a person. The bad thing is that you also grow old a lot, also as a person. So it's a very intense activity. So it's a little bit like having a baby in a way that it takes a toll on you, and it's rewarding. And you do see why, and it's the reason I guess people have kids is extremely rewarding, but it takes a toll on you, and you really need to love. And that's the second part, which is you need to fall in love, but not with the product. You need to fall in love with the problem you're solving. And I think a lot about being an entrepreneur is to be absolutely obsessed with solving a certain problem. It doesn't matter how, doesn't matter your product, doesn't matter like in which situation, you just need to really identify a problem that you care too much about. And then you just can't help but focus on it. You need to be obsessed. And I think these two things are, in a way, what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So you need to be ready to make, let's say, sacrifices that other people wouldn't. And then you need to really be obsessed about solving a particular problem. With these two things, I really think that you can basically tackle most problems in the world.
Yeah, I do think that working in startup space can kind of make you seem like you get older, but I also think you look very young. And I saw that you got the Forbes 30 award a few years ago too. My wife actually won that award last year, so just
Oh,
kudos to some of
congratulations.
the drive you have towards solving this problem. Can you talk about any recent partnerships or emerging developments that iLoF is working on?
Yeah. So we just got, so this is still not public, but it's also not under embargo any longer. So we just very recently got deployed into, or started to get deployed into a large clinical study in the US with 30 clinical sites called BioHermes. So it's within the neurogenerative space, but it's basically going to allow us to deploy and hopefully help, which is a 2,000 patient, 30 clinical sites trial in the US mostly, but also with a couple of clinical sites in Canada and in the UK. Yeah, and we just recently also start branching out our product offering with a new product within the preclinical space, where we're helping companies that are developing cell and gene therapies, including companies and biotechs that are developing cell and gene therapies on the oncology space. And we're helping them with, well, insights, new data modalities, and overall accelerating the preclinical development, especially in treatments that use, well, nanoparticles as drug delivery systems. So next generation therapeutics, including cell and gene therapy. And this is something that, yeah, we've recently struck a pilot partnership with an institution in Sweden, and we're rolling it out slowly a little bit across the globe.
Well, it's really exciting, and thanks for sharing that. Just a couple other questions before we go. Obviously, the world of AI medicine is constantly changing. There's always new papers coming out, new results. How do you kind of keep up with literature? What's your information diet like?
That's an excellent question. So I'm in my case, I don't think it's very scalable because the way I do it is so the way I do it is I go to my co-founder. So my co-founder, our COO, she's also in a way wears the a lot of times the scientific hat, and she's also obsessed about the problem as much as I am, and we kind of have like a channel where we share bibliography and where we share like just interesting papers that came out. But yeah, I just used to like every now and then, especially sometimes on holidays, like during weekends. Yeah, there's a couple of like papers that I just outlets that I used to follow and to visit every now and then and check out what cool new technology was out there. One thing that I started doing more recently is to advising like earlier like pre-seed stage companies, and that's just like a lot of them are like spin-outs coming out of academia or like scientific groups trying to make an impact, and that just allows me also to keep up with a lot of the new tech that is being developed.
Okay, got it. And just last question, just for any clinicians, oncologists who are trying to learn more about AI and maybe incorporating into their workflow or practice, what kind of advice would you give to those people?
Yeah, so number one, my one advice is do it. Just do not fall off. Do not let the AI wagon go without you. It's really going to be one of the transformational technologies of our times. And in healthcare, I think is there's even more impact than in most industries to be made, especially in increasing the let's say the power or increasing the impact that physicians can actually make in patients. So my advice would actually be see it. So research it, read about it. There's a couple of blogs that I follow. I talk about it every now and then on my LinkedIn page. But just see it as a friend rather than a foe, and do dedicate time to understand it better and how it can actually help do your day-to-day job. Don't just wait for someone to knock on your door and say, "Hey, you're a doctor. Here's this AI tool. Use it." Just proactively try to see how this can make you a better doctor.
Yeah, it's a really good pro. And I think for physicians as well, I think when we're not really at the forefront of looking at technology advancements, then it kind of advances without your input. And then it's actually not really good for anybody. I think electronic health record is a really good case example of that. So I definitely agree. I think oncologists and physicians should be more involved with AI, learn at least a little bit about the vocabulary, keep up with some of the advancements, and then potentially try to incorporate it to the workflow. Thanks so much for sharing your insights today. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Of course.